Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. We're live from the Mackinac Policy Conference on Mackinac Island. I'm Kerry Jr. II, in for Tia Graham. The next mayor of Detroit is not just tasked with managing the city, they also manage the relationships with businesses and policy leaders from across the state. And Detroit's mayor regularly attends the Mackinac Policy Conference to do that, to build those relationships. But this election season is a little different. This year, the candidates who are vying for that seat are making their case to be the next leader of Michigan's largest city. Saunteel Jenkins is one of those candidates. The social worker and former nonprofit CEO is centering public transit and education in her campaign, and she joins us now here to discuss her run for mayor. Saunteel Jenkins, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. All right, so you are a former social worker by trade. How does that primarily influence, influence your perspective on politics?
Well, my mentor, the former late great Miriam Mahaffey, she was city council president when I interned for her in undergrad. She told me that social workers put Band-Aids on wounds caused by poor public policy. We need good people to get in on the front end because it reduces the damage on the back end. And that conversation, that experience has really shaped my approach to public policy, my approach to politics, and my approach to human services.
Explain that a little bit more. It shapes your approach. You said it's a Band-Aid. So when it comes to policy then, what then are you believing is the first steps that you need to take so that the social work is not as, social workers are like on the front lines of a lot of the burdens that people face in this society.
Absolutely.
How does politics help ease that burden?
Because those policies, for instance, when we talk about housing and homelessness, right? There are local policies, there are state and federal policies that impact whether or not people have access to quality, affordable housing. So my approach is to be on the front end as a policymaker to reduce the damage and ensure that we are creating the kinds of resources that create long-term stability and help people achieve self-empowerment.
So you're the former CEO of utility bill assistance nonprofit, the Health and Warmth Fund. How did that work prepare you for the position of being mayor?
The Heat and Warmth Fund, I was the CEO there for over 10 years, and it has prepared me because as the CEO, you are managing and executing on the ground. I was responsible for not only the drafting the budget, but once it was passed by our board of directors, I had to implement it, right? If there are cuts in federal funding or state funding, I have to understand how to manage the programs and still deliver services with fewer resources. I had to identify talent, hire people, make sure that they were prepared to do their jobs. And unfortunately, occasionally, I had to, part with people as well. I had to build coalitions with legislators in Lansing and in D.C. and work on both sides of the aisle to bring resources home for our families. So there are a lot of things that I did as the CEO over the last decade that correlate with the job of the mayor.
Yeah, can you elaborate on, I want to go a little bit deeper into that too. How do you view the role as mayor? And what are some decisions that you made in your previous role as in the Health and Warmth Fund that you think are the way you would literally approach making decisions as a mayor? I'm going to get into kind of some specifics on that.
Yes. So the role of mayor is the CEO of the city of Detroit. And some of the decisions that I made that would be similar, or the approach, for example, would be the water program that we had at the Heat and Warmth Fund. When I started THAW in 2014, they had been providing assistance with heat and electricity for 30 years. I launched the first water assistance program because coming from city council, I saw the need. So I launched our first water assistance program and then started lobbying our legislature to get them to understand the urgency and the crisis that was coming around water affordability. It took a couple of years, but I successfully lobbied to get funding to create a statewide water assistance program that also included plumbing repairs. Because one of the things that I was focused on is addressing long-term issues. So if we are able to reduce usage long-term, it also reduces the cost for families.
I see. So you already illustrated about how you had to manage a lot of people in your previous roles, and you've also former member of city council.
Yes.
We know that the history of the relationship between the mayor's office and the city council can be contentious at times, but recently it's gotten a lot better. I'm wondering, as mayor, if you were elected, how would you manage that dynamic?
With respect. I understand that city council is an equal branch of government, and they're set up. There are checks and balances built into a democracy on purpose, right? So sometimes there is tension between the mayor and council. That's okay, because when differing minds come together, if we can work through it, there's usually a better outcome. So I would approach it from a respectful, a position of respect, but also make sure they're included, right? They've been elected, just like the mayor has been elected. I believe council by districts, the dynamic even of budgeting should be different, because our district council members should have more input on how money is spent in their districts. They're being held accountable by voters. Why wouldn't they have more impact? So that would be my approach.
So you want to make sure that each council member is a little more seen, and that they are seen as an equal playing field. What I would say from your experience, the contentiousness between the two, can you talk a little about like how that arises, and how you then as mayor, if this were to arise in your role, would solve it? I mean, I understand the theory of seeing them as equals, and it sounds great, but I'm wondering how, if a real conflict occurs, what's the actual dialogue and conversation that needs to come out of it? So can you pull from your experience and kind of lay it out for me?
Sure. So when real conflict occurs, it's usually because there's a disagreement in the direction that we should be going. Whether that disagreement is priorities within the budget process, it could be a development agreement that's coming to council, but council's role is, described simply as, right, they propose and dispose. The council does not draft development agreements. They pass them or they vote them down, right? They can give input on, well, I don't support this for these reasons. These are some of the things that I want to see. But a lot of the work is done up front in the mayor's office. So one of the ways to cut down the contention is to make sure they're involved up front. If this development is coming to you for a vote, when we start talking to a developer, we should start talking to council to make sure that you understand what's coming down the line. And it's okay for you to disagree.
Right.
We just need to do it respectfully, and then we need to work through finding whatever that compromise looks like for us to get it done for the people.
To the point of new developments in the city, according to the Citizens Research Council's report, Detroit's relied heavily on tax abatements to attract new developments to the city. Proponents suggest that without these types of practices, there won't be a lot of developments in the city. We're not finding other ways to get them to come here to build, create economic development here. But critics believe that it's taking public dollars away from citizens. I'm wondering what your take is and how you'd approach that type of balance going forward as mayor.
Development is still difficult to do in the city of Detroit, so we do have to be creative with how we are helping reduce the cost for developers. Part of that is the fact that we have such high property tax rates in the city of Detroit. Part of that is that a lot of lenders are still skeptical about lending in Detroit, so the financing sometimes can be more expensive. But we also have to make sure that we're developing in neighborhoods. So it's a balancing act for sure. We cannot stop investing in downtown, but we also have to invest in our neighborhoods.
Well, how do you do that then? How do you shift in the focus to say, yeah, we've been developing in this area because it looks more desirable now, we've given tax abatements, and then say, well, these are the areas we want to focus on. If we know that the interest of the developers is in conflict with the interest of, the citizens and what you want for the neighborhoods.
I wouldn't say it's in conflict, but one of the things that I will say is that as a city, we have to be more intentional. It's why my plan includes a strategic master plan for each of the 7 districts. And within that master plan, there will be a housing plan. There's a plan for commercial corridors. There's a plan for small office parks within neighborhoods. And once this plan is established in partnership with the community, we're saying to developers, we want you to come to District 1 and develop X units of housing, a community center, a movie theater, whatever the community has decided is a part of that master plan. We're saying to developers, this is what we want to see, and if you can come here and build it, we offer you incentives to do so.
I see.
It's about intention, and it's about being intentional.
And not to get too specific of the entire plan, but what then for you is the first step of engaging in those neighborhoods? Because you got to start somewhere. Trying to do all of it at once, I imagine, is too many balls in the air at one time. But what would you say is the first start that will spark kind of the rest of the growth in those neighborhoods?
The first thing I'll say is the job of the mayor, just by nature of the city of Detroit and what the mayor will be facing, will be juggling multiple balls. There will be no one ball in the air ever, right? Whoever our mayor is will have to be able to juggle multiple balls. But as it relates to the strategic master plan, I would start with the land use planning that is happening now. And I have every faith in Alexa Bush, who is leading that process, and her understanding of community input. But then we take that land use plan, and then we start to layer that with community input related to safety, public transit, housing, those commercial corridors.
Can you briefly just give me an understanding of what the land use plan is for folks who don't know?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So land use is all about zoning, how different areas of the city are zoned for use. And right now, an overwhelming majority of development projects that come to the city end up getting a special land use zoning because it's been so long since we've updated our master plan and our zoning laws across the city. So a land can be zoned for high density residential, it could be zoned for low density or commercial, or it might be zoned for industrial, right? The zoning and land use are what determines whether or not Stellantis can be located in the middle of a neighborhood, right?
And so it's from that you will then understand, you will build the investment that you were talking about earlier.
Correct. And there may be some changes that have to take place as well.
You're listening to the Metro on Mackinac Island at the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Kerry Jr. II. I'm speaking with Saunteel Jenkins, who's running for mayor for the city of Detroit. So I want to get into some of the things that you care about and what you're running on. Education is the primary focus of your campaign. You want to work more closely with the Detroit Public Schools superintendent if you become mayor. Talk about why that's important and what you plan to do.
Certainly, because our kids are our future, right? So we, as the city of Detroit, continues to grow, if we want it to be sustainable and long-term, we have to ensure that our neighborhoods are growing too. And when families are moving to neighborhoods, they look at pricing, they look at safety, they look at schools. So partnering with our schools to ensure that we're providing the highest quality education for our kids. And we have some great schools in DPS CD now, but we want every neighborhood to have great options for all of our kids. So it's working with DPSCD. We have to work with charters, whether you like charters or not, they are here to stay. So we have to support our charters and even the private schools that are in the city of Detroit so that parents and Detroiters have options.
What does that look like, investing in schools in the city of Detroit? What does that look like for you?
So it looks like partnerships. It looks like in neighborhoods where there is a community recreation center, it is open between the hours of 3 and 8, which are the most dangerous hours for kids. And in neighborhoods where there's no community center, there's a school open. But we are partnering and leveraging our resources for staffing and programming. So that's one of the things it looks like. It looks like we're partnering directly with the schools on our summer jobs program and after school jobs to create real career pathways for our children so that we have our the mayor is helping to build out vocational programs and pre-college programs to get our students ready for the next step in their lives.
This is interesting because it sounds like your approach, at least from what I'm hearing now, is not as much about changing the schools in the classrooms themselves, but providing supplemental programming for students when they're not in school, or the system in the career development.
Yes.
Why? I guess I'm wondering why that approach. Why not approach it by coming into the schools, adjusting curriculum? Why not that way?
Because the mayor's role is addressing what I've been calling the social determinants to education. And there we hear people talk about the social determinants to health. They're the same, right? It's whether or not they're in a safe neighborhood, it's whether or not they had food before they came to school, whether they have a roof over their head. The mayor's job is not to educate the kids. The mayor's job is to create an environment whereby we can have quality education for our kids.
Another big focus of yours is public transit. You plan to extend the Q line. How do you plan to do that?
Oh, no,
That's not your plan.
That's not my plan. My plan. So my plan
transit
is comprehensive public transit, and the Q line would be one of multiple things that we are working on, right?
Okay.
So the Q line would be part of a regional transit plan.
I see.
Where we would identify funding to take it from Jefferson to Pontiac.
Okay.
Right. But that would just be one part, right? We have the A2D2, which is the bus between Ann Arbor and Detroit. That's a good start. We have now we can get from the city to the airport. But we need, if there are jobs in Auburn Hills, Detroiters need to be able to get there. So we should be partnering with regional transit systems, DDOT, SMART. We should all be partnering to make sure that where one ends, the other picks up. And that we're leveraging resources on both sides to serve our entire region.
I'm wondering how similar this is to the former RTA plan that failed in 2016 when there was a bus rapid transit system proposed. How broad, I guess, are you looking to collaborate, or is this something that's maybe a little bit smaller that people can digest?
It's both.
Okay.
It is. Much of it is similar because the issue wasn't that the plan didn't work. The issue was that it didn't pass, right? That it didn't get enough votes to pass.
Yeah.
So part of it is similar. But then also within DDOT, it's creating transportation hubs throughout the city where we have the buses that are a block long, right, our traditional buses, but where we have smaller shuttle buses that can run smaller routes and loops within certain areas where we talk about those office parks and commercial corridors, senior buildings where they need to get to the grocery store. And because of technology, we can create more on-demand service because we can actually tell when a bus is full, right, and where a bus is on their route. We should utilize transportation to provide that on-demand service. And then the RTA is providing the more comprehensive regional transportation that we need.
Saunteel Jenkins, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Thank you for joining us at this table. Detroit mayoral candidate Saunteel Jenkins. Thank you for joining us on the Metro. Coming up, we'll talk about the theme of this year's Mackinac Policy Conference and the kinds of things politicians and business leaders hope to accomplish. You're listening to The Metro. We'll be right back.